"Don't hurt her, I'll buy her," the cowboy said, his voice cutting through the dust-choked air of the main street. The crowd froze, boots grinding against gravel, as the chained woman lifted her eyes, mud-streaked, proud, and unbroken. They called her trash, a mistake not worth a dime. But he saw something different, a spark that refused to die. Around them, the sheriff's badge caught the sun, the church bell tolled, and silence spread like wildfire. Who was this woman everyone wanted gone? And why did this stranger risk everything to save her? What secret bound them before this moment, and what would it cost him to call her wife? The noon sun beat mercilessly over Dry Creek, turning every board of the saloon porch into a mirror of heat. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a gunfight, and the sound of the auctioneer's hammer echoed across the square. At the center stood a woman, barefoot, wrists bound, face streaked with dirt and defiance. No one knew her real name. Around town, they called her the thief's girl, the liar's widow, the one who should have been gone long ago. Men spat near her boots. Women whispered behind their fans. The sheriff stood by the gallows post, too tired to care, too used to scenes like this. Behind him, a sign flapped in the wind. Property sale today, letters half erased by dust, but its meaning clear enough. In Dry Creek, everything could be bought, even a person's dignity. Then came the sound that made the crowd turn, a slow rhythm of hooves, one man riding against the sun. He wore a long coat that had seen too many winters and a hat that shadowed his eyes. To most, he was just another drifter passing through. To her, he was the man who had once given her water when no one else would. The horse stopped in front of the platform. The rider dismounted without a word, boots sinking into the dust. He looked up, his gaze steady on the sheriff, then on the woman. "Don't hurt her," he said, voice low but sharp enough to cut through the murmurs. "I'll buy her." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "You'd pay coin for that!" someone shouted. The cowboy didn't flinch. His hand rested near his belt, but not on the gun, on the old leather pouch that held his last savings. "Call her trash all you want," he said, eyes never leaving the woman's face. "I see a wife in her." The sheriff hesitated. The hammer paused mid-air. For the first time that day, the woman blinked away her tears. The sun shifted, painting her chains in gold. And in that instant, the town of Dry Creek held its breath, because one man's words had just rewritten the law of who was worth saving. The crowd didn't know whether to laugh or spit. Dust swirled in lazy circles, rising with the heat. Somewhere, a dog barked, then went silent, as if even it wanted to see how this fool's words would play out. The cowboy stood motionless, the woman's gaze fixed on him like she was seeing a ghost. The sheriff shifted his weight, adjusting the leather strap that held his badge. "You got money to back those words?" he asked, voice dry as old rope. The cowboy reached into his coat and drew out a small leather pouch, tossing it into the air. It landed with a dull thud at the sheriff's boots. The sound of clinking coins broke the tension like a shot. "That's every dollar I've got," he said. "And it's worth more than her being treated like an animal." A murmur rippled through the onlookers, half disbelief, half contempt. In Dry Creek, mercy wasn't a language anyone spoke freely. The sheriff squatted, lifted the pouch, and poured the contents into his hand. The coins were genuine, though worn from travel. He looked back at the cowboy, squinting. "You know she's accused of theft," he said. "Ran with that outlaw who burned 2 barns east of here." "I know what people say," the cowboy replied, "but I trust what I see." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "And what's that?" "A woman who's been hungry too long," the cowboy said quietly, "and men who've mistaken hunger for guilt." The words cut deeper than he intended. For a moment, the sheriff's jaw tightened. He'd seen that same hunger in his own wife's eyes after the war, when the town forgot its promises. But duty was a habit that clung harder than conscience. He turned to the crowd. "Anyone got a better offer?" No one spoke. Even the wind seemed to wait. Then, from the back of the crowd, a voice rang out. A man's, sharp and oily. "I'll double whatever he paid. The girl belongs in the mines where she can earn her keep." The cowboy's eyes lifted toward the speaker, a merchant in a clean vest, silver chain glinting in the sun. He recognized the type, a man who called himself respectable because he paid others to sin for him. "She's not for sale to you," the cowboy said. The merchant smiled thinly. "Everything's for sale, friend, especially filth." That word, filth, snapped something in the woman. She jerked forward, voice raw. "You don't know me!" The crowd gasped. The sheriff raised a hand, but the cowboy stepped between them, his presence quiet but immovable. "She's with me now," he said. The sheriff's jaw worked as he weighed the air thick with tension. At last, he tossed the pouch back at the cowboy. "You paid," he said. "Take her, and get out before sundown. You're both the town's problem until then." The crowd began to disperse, muttering curses and gossip in equal measure. The cowboy turned to the woman, unfastening the iron shackles around her wrists. The metal left red rings on her skin. She didn't thank him. She just stared, disbelief and pride warring in her eyes. "Why'd you do it?" she whispered. He slipped the key into his pocket. "Because no one else would." She laughed, dry, almost cruel. "You think that makes you a hero?" He met her gaze. "No, just human." They walked down the main street in silence, boots and bare feet leaving twin tracks in the dust. The onlookers drifted to their porches, watching. Somewhere behind them, the blacksmith's hammer struck metal again, rhythmic and final. By the time they reached the edge of town, the woman spoke again. "You'll regret this," she said. "Men always do." "Maybe," he said, "but not today." He led her to his horse, a tired bay with dust in its mane. He untied a canteen from the saddle and handed it to her. She hesitated before drinking, like she thought it might be poisoned. "I don't need your pity," she said. "It's not pity," he answered. "It's water." For the first time, her expression softened. She drank slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. When she handed the canteen back, he caught sight of something faint under the grime on her wrist, a mark, like half a brand. He frowned, pretending not to notice. Whatever story came with it, she wasn't ready to tell. They rode out together, the sun sinking low behind them. The road stretched long and empty, leading toward the hills. He didn't ask where she wanted to go, she didn't ask his name. Behind them, Dry Creek's bell rang again, once, twice, then stopped. A rider stepped from the shadows of the saloon porch, watching their silhouettes fade into the horizon. The merchant. His eyes narrowed as he turned to the sheriff, who was still on the porch. "You just let them go?" the merchant sneered. The sheriff holstered his pistol. "They'll hang themselves without my help." The merchant smiled, slow and cold. "Then maybe I'll make sure of it." He mounted his horse, spurred it hard, and rode out the opposite way, cutting through the canyons where the road narrowed. By nightfall, the moon would rise, and the hunter would already be waiting. The night stretched long across the desert, a sheet of cold silver light brushing the ground. The cowboy rode ahead, guiding the horse by instinct more than sight. Behind him, the woman kept her distance, her back straight despite the exhaustion that pulled at her bones. Neither had spoken since they'd left Dry Creek. Words were heavier than the silence, and less useful. They stopped at a dry riverbed where the moonlight hit the stones like glass. He unsaddled the horse and coaxed a small flame from his tinderbox. The fire caught slow, spitting sparks that drifted upward and died in the night wind. "You can sleep," he said quietly. "I'll keep watch." She crouched near the fire but didn't sit. "Men who buy things tend to want something back." "I didn't buy you," he said, eyes fixed on the flame. "I bought your chance to walk away alive." She studied him, her jaw tightening as if she wanted to argue, but the fight in her seemed spent. She finally sat, pulling her torn shawl around her shoulders. For a few minutes, only the fire spoke, crackling like rain that would never come. Then she asked, "Why'd you do it, really?" He hesitated. "Because I saw the same look in you I once had." "What look's that?" "The one that says you've already buried everything worth living for." The firelight trembled across her face, softening the hard lines. "Maybe you should have left me there," she murmured. "Maybe," he said. "But then I'd still hear you screaming in my head." She looked away. For a moment, her eyes glistened, not from tears, but from the reflection of flame. A coyote howled somewhere far off. The horse snorted, restless. The cowboy stood, scanning the ridgeline. Nothing moved, but the wind carried a smell he didn't like, smoke and iron. He tightened the cinch strap and threw dirt over the fire. "We ride now," he said. "It's midnight," she protested. "Better tired than dead." She climbed onto the horse behind him, hands uncertain on the saddle. The road ahead twisted through narrow gullies where the rocks rose like teeth. The moon slipped behind the cliffs, drowning the trail in darkness. Half a mile later, the horse shied. The cowboy pulled the reins tight. A faint glimmer ahead, metal catching moonlight, a rifle barrel. "Easy," he whispered. "Stay still." A voice came out of the dark. "Didn't take you long to run, preacher." The cowboy's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. "I don't wear that collar anymore," he said. From the shadows rode the merchant, flanked by two hired men. Their faces were half covered with scarves, eyes bright with greed. "You cost me a fine piece of property," the merchant said. "Now I'm taking her, and whatever else you've got left." The woman's hands tightened around the cowboy's coat. "You know him," she whispered. "Too well," he muttered. He swung down from the horse, raising his hands slightly. "She's under my protection." The merchant laughed. "Your protection? Out here, preacher, the Lord ain't hiring guards." He motioned with his chin, and one of the gunmen advanced. The cowboy waited until the man was 3 steps away, then moved. His boot kicked up dust, his arm struck the rifle aside, and a single punch cracked the night open. The man dropped. The second gunman fired. The bullet grazed the cowboy's shoulder, spinning him sideways. He hit the dirt hard but rolled, drawing his revolver as he came up. 2 quick shots, one to the air to startle the horse, one to the man's leg. The scream that followed scattered the night birds from the rocks. The merchant backed his horse, fury and fear twisting his face. "You think you can run forever," he shouted. "You don't even know who she really is." The woman's breath caught. What does he mean? But the merchant only laughed, spurring his horse away into the canyons. The wounded gunman crawled after him, leaving a dark trail in the dust. The cowboy holstered his weapon, wincing at the burn in his shoulder. "We need to move," he said. She stepped in front of him. What did he mean? He looked at her, the fire of adrenaline fading into something quieter. "I don't know," he said, but the lie felt heavy on his tongue. She watched him, seeing through the hesitation. "You're hiding something." "Everyone is," he answered. "The trick is keeping it from killing you." They rode again before dawn, the horizon bleeding pale gold. Behind them, vultures circled the canyon. Ahead, the hills opened into a valley wrapped in fog. For a fleeting hour, peace returned. The woman leaned her head against the horse's mane, eyes closing, maybe dreaming of a life that wasn't borrowed. The cowboy let her rest. His shoulder throbbed, blood soaking his sleeve, but he said nothing. When the fog lifted, they saw it, a cabin half buried under the cliffside, smoke still curling from the chimney. Shelter, safety, maybe. But as they approached, the cowboy noticed something carved into the doorframe. A small half-circle burned into the wood, identical to the faint mark on the woman's wrist. He froze. The woman followed his stare and went pale. "Whose place is this?" he asked. Her voice broke on the answer. "It's where they branded me." The wind turned colder as they stood before the cabin. Smoke still curled from the chimney, but no voices came from inside, only the slow creak of timber settling against stone. The cowboy's hand hovered near his holster, though he didn't draw. "You sure this is the place?" he asked. She nodded once. "I remember the sound. The wind through those cracks." He studied the half-circle burned into the doorframe. "Someone marked it to be remembered. Or to warn others," she said. He pushed the door open. The hinges moaned like a prayer too long unanswered. Inside, the air was stale with ash and something older, memories that never quite left. A single lantern hung crooked from a nail, its glass blackened with soot. She stepped in slowly, touching the wall where the brand had once been pressed against her skin. "They used to keep people here," she whispered, "not for money, for obedience." He said nothing. The way she spoke told him she didn't need pity, she needed silence to speak for her. He knelt near the fireplace, finding the ashes still warm. "Someone's been here tonight." Her eyes darted to the window. "The merchant, maybe. Or someone who wants the same thing he does." He walked outside again, scanning the ridgeline. A trail of hoofprints led down the slope, fresh, deep. "We'll rest an hour, Then move on, he said. You can sleep inside. I'll take first watch. She looked at him, almost smiling through the exhaustion. Still think you're not a hero? Heroes die young, he said. I'm trying to make it till morning. She went inside. Through the crack in the door, he saw her sit near the fire pit, fingers tracing the scars on her wrists as if testing whether they still belonged to her. He leaned against the porch post, listening to the desert breathe. Somewhere beyond the hills, thunder rolled, a dry kind that promised wind, not rain. He thought about turning back, about how easy it would be to hand her over and buy peace. But peace built on betrayal never lasted. He knew that too well. A faint sound broke his thoughts. A horse's neigh, distant but closing fast. He drew his gun, stepping off the porch. The noise grew clearer. Hooves, at least 2 riders. He moved into the shadows, heart steady, breath shallow. Then he saw the glint again. Moonlight on metal, but it wasn't a gun this time. It was a badge. The sheriff rode into view, hat pulled low, another deputy behind him. You got a talent for trouble, preacher, he said. Didn't expect you this far out, the cowboy replied. Didn't expect to hear gunfire near town either. The deputy's gaze shifted to the cabin. That her? She's asleep, the cowboy said. The sheriff dismounted, boots crunching gravel. You can't keep running. That woman's name came up in more than one bounty file. There's a price on her head, and now on yours. I'm not turning her in, the cowboy said. The sheriff sighed. Then you're choosing the losing side again. The cowboy met his eyes. Maybe the right side's supposed to lose sometimes. The sheriff's jaw tightened. You've got till sunrise. After that, I can't pretend I didn't find you. He turned, mounted up, and rode off, dust swallowing their tracks. The deputy lingered a moment, staring at the cowboy. She's not who you think she is, he said quietly. She's the reason the mines burned. Then he followed the sheriff into the dark. The cowboy stood still, the night pressing in. Inside, the woman stirred. They were here, she said softly from the doorway. I know. What did they tell you? Enough to make me ask a question. Then ask it. He hesitated. Did you start that fire? Her face changed. Not fear, not guilt, but something else, almost defiance. I lit the match, she said, but not to burn the mines. To stop what was happening in them. He waited. She didn't look away. They kept children down there, she whispered. People who owed debts they could never pay. I set them free. The fire did the rest. He exhaled slowly, the weight of her words sinking into the space between them. That's why the merchant wants you dead. That's why everyone does, she said. The fire in the hearth sputtered and died, leaving only the sound of the wind pressing against the cabin walls. He looked at her, realizing what he saw wasn't guilt. It was the cost of doing what no one else had the courage to. He tossed a log back onto the ashes. Then we'll ride before sunrise. Where? Somewhere they don't remember your name. She nodded, eyes glinting with something close to trust. For the first time, the silence between them didn't feel empty. It felt like a promise. Outside, the thunder rolled again. This time, it carried the sound of hoofbeats beneath it, many of them. The cowboy moved to the window. Torches flickered at the base of the hill. 5, maybe 6 riders. The merchant's men had found them. He turned to her, voice calm but firm. You wanted to know what I saw in you, he said. Now's your chance to prove me right. She reached for the rifle, leaning by the door, hands steady despite the tremor in the air. Then let's finish what we started, she said. The first torch flared against the night like a warning. The cowboy stepped from the window, counting shadows sliding down the hill, 6 riders, moving slow, disciplined. The woman knelt by the fire, fingers loading shells into the rifle with quiet precision. Neither spoke. The wind did that for them, whispering through the cracks in the walls. He tipped his hat lower. We hold till daylight, he said. She glanced up. And if they don't wait that long? Then we make 'em wish they had. The hoofbeats drew closer, rhythm echoing through the canyon. The horse nearest the porch stopped. The merchant's voice cut through the dark. Preacher, you've got something that belongs to me. The cowboy's jaw tightened. You ever think maybe she doesn't belong to anyone? A pause, then laughter, low and mean. That woman burned half my future. I'll take it back tonight. piece by piece. The cowboy shifted his stance. "Come take it then." The reply came as thunder, rifles cracking, glass shattering. Splinters of window frame rained over the floor. The woman dropped behind the table, returning one sharp shot. The flash lit her face like a photograph. Steady eyes, clenched jaw, no fear left to lose. Outside, a horse screamed and stumbled. The firing stopped long enough for the merchant to curse his men. The cowboy pulled the woman toward the corner where the wall was thicker. "You hit?" he asked. She shook her head. "You?" "Not yet." He peeked through a gap in the boards. Two riders flanked the cabin, trying for the rear. He signaled her toward the door. "When I fire twice, I'll run for the ridge. Stay low." "And you?" "I'll keep them busy." She hesitated, reading something final in his tone. "Don't play martyr now." "Not martyr," he said. "Just buying time." She gave a thin, defiant smile. "Then make it worth the price." The next volley came faster, bullets snapping wood like kindling. He fired twice through the front gap. She slipped out the side, vanishing into the darkness beyond the torches. The merchant shouted an order. 3 men peeled off after her. The cowboy moved to the opposite wall, kicked the door open, and fired into the night. One shot high, one low. A rider toppled, another fled for cover. He ducked back inside, breath rough, shoulder screaming from the old wound. Through the smoke he heard a different sound. Hoofbeats racing away, not toward. He risked a glance. One of the torches had fallen, rolling in the dirt, and beside it the woman rode the merchant's own horse, reins tight, driving it straight at the men behind him. She fired once, the shot grazing the ground near the merchant's feet. His horse reared, throwing him. By the time he scrambled up, she'd already turned the animal back toward the cabin. The cowboy stepped out onto the porch, rifle steady. "End it here," he called. "Let her walk." The merchant's face gleamed red in the torchlight. "You don't understand, preacher. She started the fire that took my son." The words hit harder than any bullet. The woman froze, half dismounted, eyes wide. "I didn't know," she whispered. "There were people inside." The merchant raised his gun. "You killed him!" The cowboy moved before thought caught up. The gun went off, the flash white against the night. When the echo faded, the merchant's weapon lay in the dirt, smoking, his hand bleeding where the shot had struck the pistol from his grip. "Enough," the cowboy said. The merchant sank to his knees, rage breaking into something hollow. Behind him, his men hesitated, then backed their horses toward the ridge, unwilling to keep fighting a man who didn't miss. The wind carried the torches sideways, their flames thinning to sparks. Soon only the crackle of dying fire and the horses' heavy breathing filled the valley. The woman slid from the saddle, staring at the merchant. "I didn't mean to kill anyone," she said quietly, "but I won't let you own me for it." He didn't answer. The hate had burned out of him. All that remained was grief. The cowboy lowered his gun. "Go home," he told the merchant. "Bury your boy proper. Leave the dead to judge her." The merchant gathered the pistol, looked once at them both, and limped away into the dark, his men following. When the last hoofbeat faded, the woman turned toward the cowboy. "You should have let him shoot," he met her eyes, "and undo what you started. You gave people their freedom. Someone's got to live long enough to remember that." She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping. "You still see a wife in me?" He paused, glancing at the first hint of dawn edging the horizon. "No," he said softly. "I see a survivor." For a long moment they stood without speaking. The firelight faded, replaced by the cold grey of morning. The ridge beyond the valley lay open now, miles of nothing but dust and chance. He shouldered his pack, gesturing toward it. "You coming?" She hesitated, then nodded. Together they walked toward the rising sun, their shadows stretching long behind them. They rode until the sun broke full over the mesas. The desert looked peaceful from a distance, but every ridge carried the echo of last night's gunfire. The cowboy's shirt was stiff with dried blood. The woman's hands shook when she tried to drink from the canteen. Neither mentioned it. By mid-morning, a thin trail appeared between the hills, wagon ruts, prints of shoes and hooves. Civilization or something that pretended to be. He slowed the horse. "Town's close," he said. "Keep your head down." She smirked faintly. "Hard to hide when folks already made up their minds about you." They ain't met you yet. They've met what I used to be, she answered. That's enough for most. The town came into view, a cluster of faded buildings hugged by a river bend. A sign creaked in the wind. St. John's Crossing. Compared to Dry Creek, it almost looked alive. Smoke rose from chimneys, a bell rang somewhere, and the smell of coffee drifted through the air. He led the horse to the livery. The stable boy looked up, ready with the usual small-town suspicion. You new folks? Just passing through, the cowboy said. Need feed and a roof for a night. The boy's eyes flicked to the woman's torn shawl, then away. Sheriff's office is across the street, he said, voice pointed. The cowboy tipped his hat. We'll find it if we need it. They took a room above the general store, a single bed, a basin, cracked wallpaper. She washed in silence while he checked the window's latch. Outside, church bells marked the hour. For the first time since Dry Creek, he thought maybe they'd outrun it all. Then came the knock. 3 short taps, deliberate. He opened the door an inch. A boy stood there, no older than 12, holding a folded paper. Message for the lady, he said, eyes wide with the thrill of mischief. The cowboy took it, flipping the coin he'd used to pay for the room. Who sent this? The boy shrugged. A man on a wagon road south. Said she'd know. The cowboy shut the door and handed her the note. Her face drained of color as she read. What is it? He asked. She passed it to him. Only a few words, written in a hand that trembled but pressed hard. Debt never burns out. J. He frowned. The merchant, she shook her head. He's dead to his anger. This is someone else, someone who worked the mines. You said you freed them. Not all, she said quietly. Some stayed loyal to the men who paid them. Outside, the street murmured with midday noise. Boots, wagon wheels, a dog barking near the blacksmith's yard. Ordinary sounds, yet everyone felt like it hid a watcher. The cowboy closed the shutters. We'll leave tonight. She didn't move. Running again won't change what we've done. Staying gets you killed. She looked at him, eyes sharper now. You're not running because of me. You're running because you can't stand still long enough to see who you've become. He didn't answer. The truth of it sat heavy between them. Downstairs, someone shouted. A burst of laughter followed by the thud of boots. The cowboy crossed to the window, eased the shutter open a crack. 2 men stood by the trough outside, passing a bottle. One had a scar along his jaw, the kind a branding iron leaves when used wrong. They weren't from this town. He turned back. Pack your things. She was already doing it. By dusk, St. John's Crossing glowed in lamplight. The cowboy led the horse to the alley behind the store. The woman climbed up, glancing once at the horizon. Where to now? North, he said. Mountains hide people who want to disappear. And you still trying to save me? He smiled, weary but real. Just keeping promises. They rode through the back streets, the sound of crickets filling the spaces where words failed. At the edge of town, the road narrowed between 2 barns. The cowboy slowed, the instinct that had kept him alive too long to ignore. From the shadows stepped 3 men. The one in front smiled without warmth. Evening, preacher. The cowboy's hand hovered near his belt. You picked the wrong road? The man tilted his head. That woman lit the mines, burned my brother alive. The law don't reach out here, so we brought our own. The woman straightened in the saddle. Your brother kept children chained. The man's eyes flicked to her, hatred flaring. Then you die twice. The first shot came from the ridge, someone else firing, unseen. The bullet struck the dirt between them, scattering dust. Confusion rippled through both sides. The cowboy grabbed the reins, shouting, "Ride!" They bolted down the road, hooves striking sparks off stone. More gunfire followed, wild and chasing, echoing against the canyon walls. The wind tore at their coats as they raced toward the river. When they reached the bridge, the woman twisted in the saddle, returning one sharp shot. It cracked the air clean. One pursuer fell back, horse screaming. The rest slowed. They crossed the bridge as the planks groaned beneath them. The cowboy turned in the saddle just in time to see the first torch catch, fire leaping from the railing, spreading fast. The bridge behind them became a line of flame cutting the night in 2. He didn't look back again until they reached the far bank. The fire glowed like sunrise, painting their faces in orange light. She exhaled shakily. "We just burned the only road out." He looked east, where the mountains rose like shadows against the stars. "Then we find another one." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of smoke and river water. For a moment, the world went quiet. No pursuit, no crowd, just two souls trying to outpace their pasts. Then, from far across the firelit valley, a single horn sounded, a signal, low and deliberate. The cowboy's expression hardened. They're not done. They rode hard until the smoke was only a memory behind them. The stars thinned as dawn bled into the sky, washing the desert pale. Every muscle in the cowboy's back ached, but he didn't slow. Only when the land began to rise and the air turned sharp did he rein the horse in. Ahead, the mountains waited, great walls of slate and pine. Mist curled through the ravines like breath from an unseen beast. The woman drew her shawl tighter. "You sure this is the way?" "It's the only one left," he said. "Beyond that ridge there's an old mission. They used to take in travelers." "Used to?" "Last I heard, it burned," he said. "But sometimes ruins still shelter people." They climbed through switchbacks choked with sage. The wind smelled of snow. Each turn hid another echo, the distant crack of a branch, a stone rolling down the slope. The woman glanced back more than once. "So you think they followed?" she asked. He nodded. "They'll track the smoke, not the river. That buys us a few hours." She stared at him. "You talk like a man who's been hunted before." "I have," he said simply. By noon they reached the edge of the forest. Pines towered overhead, their trunks black with sap. Between them stood the remains of a chapel wall, half-fallen, doorless, a cross of scorched wood leaning against the stones. The cowboy dismounted, leading the horse to a trough half-filled with rainwater. "This'll do," he said. Inside, light filtered through the broken roof. The woman ran her hand along the stone, tracing carvings too worn to read. "Feels like the world forgot this place," she murmured. "Maybe that's mercy," he said. They built a small fire in the corner, the smoke slipping through the holes in the ceiling. For the first time in days, they spoke without whispering. "You could have left me," she said, "back at the bridge." He looked at the flame. "I did once, left someone I should have stayed for. Never again." Silence stretched. Outside, a crow called once and went quiet. When the woman finally spoke, her voice was thin but steady. "The mark on my wrist, it wasn't just from the mine. It was a brand for debt. They said it would fade when the debt was forgiven." She smiled bitterly. "Guess forgiveness don't come cheap." He reached into his coat, pulling out the pouch that had once held every dollar he owned. "Then maybe this buys a little of it back." She stared at the coins, then at him. "You think money can clean what people did to me?" "No," he said, "but it might buy a start." She looked away, tears threatening but unspent. "You talk like a preacher again." "Old habits." The wind shifted. "Horses." He rose, stepping to the doorway. Down the slope, 3 riders emerged from the trees. Too far to see faces, close enough to glint in the light. He counted the torches strapped to their saddles. Not the same men as before. Scouts. "They found us," he said. The woman picked up the rifle. "Then what now?" He watched the riders pause at the tree line, conferring. "They're waiting for someone." "Who?" He scanned the horizon. "Whoever blows that horn again." She loaded a round, movements quick but careful. "We can't fight an army." "We don't have to," he said. "Just outlast the dark." As the sun slid lower, he set traps, simple, silent ones, a loosened stone above the trail, a rope stretched between 2 trunks. She gathered pine pitch, spreading it along a fallen beam near the doorway. When they were done, they sat by the fire, each listening to the faint rhythm of hoofbeats in the distance. The world felt suspended between breaths. She said, "You ever wonder if saving me was worth it?" He met her eyes. "Ask me when we're free." Dusk fell. The forest deepened into blue. The first scout advanced, torch in hand, light flickering across the ruins. The cowboy raised his rifle, waiting. The horse stepped forward, and then the loosened stone gave way. The torch dropped, flaring into the pitch. Flames shot upward, blinding and sudden. The scout shouted, rearing back. The others scattered. Fire climbed the chapel wall, painting the night with gold. In the chaos, the cowboy grabbed the woman's hand. Now! They ran toward the ravine behind the mission, smoke chasing them. The ground fell steeply, loose with shale. She slipped. He caught her arm, pulling her close as rocks tumbled past. Below, the valley opened, wide, empty, promising nothing but space. They slid the last few feet, landing hard. Above them, the flames roared higher, swallowing the ruin. The riders' voices faded into confusion. For a moment, everything was still but the crackle of burning pine. She turned to him, breathing hard. "That place is gone." He nodded. "So is our trail." She looked up at the glow painting the sky. "We keep destroying what saves us." He tightened the reins around his wrist. "Or maybe we're just burning what kept us captive." She didn't answer, but her eyes met his in the darkness, and something shifted. Trust, maybe, or the first fragile piece of peace. Then, from the far side of the ridge, a flash of light, mirror, not flame. A signal. He exhaled. "They've got more men." She smiled without humor. "Seems freedom always costs extra." He glanced at the mountains ahead. "Then let's keep paying." They started upward again, toward the snow line, two figures against the dying fire. The trail narrowed until it was little more than a scar along the ridge. The snow came in flurries now, thin at first, then thicker, muting the world. The woman's shawl had turned white at the edges. The cowboy's coat was stiff with frost. Behind them, the glow of the burned mission had faded into a dull smear of smoke. "Keep close to the rocks," he said. "Wind'll push you off the edge if you don't." She nodded, gripping the saddle horn. The air tasted like iron. Every few steps, the horse stumbled on loose shale. Below, the valley was gone, swallowed by cloud. "Where does this trail lead?" she asked. He squinted into the fog. "There's a ranger post ahead. Used to be a way station for travelers. If it's still standing, there'll be food. And if it's not..." He smiled faintly. "Then we get creative." A crack echoed through the canyon, sharp, deliberate. Rifle fire. They both froze. A second shot followed, this one closer, chipping the rock near his boot. "They found us," she whispered. "Maybe not yet," he said, scanning the ridgeline. "But they will." He led the horse off the main trail, toward a narrow cut between the rocks. They dismounted and crouched low, breath ghosting in the cold air. The snow muffled everything but the heartbeat in their ears. Another voice rose from the fog, drawn out, mocking. "Preacher, you running from your own sermons again?" The cowboy's jaw tightened. The tone was familiar, too familiar. "That's not the merchant," he murmured. "That's someone worse." The woman frowned. "Who?" He didn't answer right away. "A man I once called brother." The voice came again, closer now. "How you took the cross off your neck, but you still carry the sin, don't you?" The woman stared at him. "He knows you." He nodded slowly. "Used to ride with him, back when I believed law could save people. And now. Now I believe people save themselves." They crawled along the rock face until they reached a narrow ledge. From there they could see 3 riders below, one holding a lantern high, the others scanning the slope. The leader wore a black coat, snow gathering on the brim of his hat. Even through the mist his voice carried clear. "You've got a woman with you," he called. "She's marked property. Return her, and I'll forget what you were." The woman's hand tightened around the rifle. "What you were?" she asked. The cowboy's breath misted in the cold. "Before the war, I worked for the debt office. The brands, they were my orders to enforce." Her face went still. "You branded people like me." He met her eyes, shame cutting through the chill. "I did. Until the day I saw what it made of us. I burned my own ledger and ran." Below, the riders dismounted, lanterns swinging. "He can't hide forever," the man shouted. "He owes us a reckoning." The woman swallowed hard. "So that mark on my wrist, your signature made it legal." He didn't deny it. "That's why I couldn't leave you. Maybe saving you's the only sermon worth preaching now." She looked down at the rifle, then at him. "Then you get one chance to finish what you started, on the right side this time." They positioned themselves behind the ridge. The riders below advanced, torches flickering in the snow. When the first reached the bend, the woman fired, a warning shot that shattered a lantern and sent horses rearing. The cowboy followed with a single echoing round, striking the rock near the leader's feet. The message was clear: keep coming and die cold. The man in the black coat laughed once, hollow. You can't hide from judgment forever, preacher. The cowboy shouted back, maybe not, but I can delay it long enough for her to live free. The leader motioned to his men. Fall back. Let the storm finish what we started. They melted into the fog, their torches vanishing one by one. When the sound of hoofbeats faded, the woman lowered the rifle. Her breath trembled. They'll wait for morning. He nodded. Then we move before it. She studied him for a long time. You ever think redemption's just another kind of running? He looked toward the east, where the sky was paling again. Maybe. But sometimes running's the only way to find where to stop. They climbed higher, the snow deepening around their boots. The ridge curved toward a gap where the clouds thinned, revealing a faint golden light. The woman reached for his arm, steadying herself. There's a cabin, she said. He followed her gaze and saw it, a single lantern burning in the distance, half hidden by snowdrifts, shelter or another snare. Either way, he said, we find out together. They pressed on through the cold, two figures fading into dawn, unaware that the man in the black coat was still watching from the shadows below, a second lantern flickering in his hand. The cabin stood crooked against the slope, its roof bowed under snow, a thin column of smoke rising from the chimney. The cowboy stopped 20 paces out, scanning the drifts for prints, fresh ones cut straight to the door. Someone was already inside. He signaled the woman to stay back. If I don't come out, ride for the ridge. She shook her head. I'm done waiting while men make choices for me. He didn't argue. They moved together, silent as the wind. The door creaked open to the smell of wood smoke and iron. A lantern hung from a rafter, throwing yellow light across the room. 2 tin cups sat on a table, steam still curling from them. And by the fire, a man in a dark coat, hat off, gloves folded neatly beside him. I was wondering how long it'd take you, he said. His voice was calm, familiar, steady as the tick of a clock. The cowboy's hand hovered near his revolver. You should have stayed in the valley, Jonas. Jonas smiled. And miss the sermon? You always did preach best with a gun nearby. The woman stiffened. He's the one who branded me. Jonas turned his eyes to her, cool, assessing, unflinching. I signed the order. Your name was one of hundreds. Don't flatter yourself that you were special. Her fingers whitened on the rifle stock. The cowboy stepped between them. This ends now. Jonas tilted his head. You burned my records, brother. You cost me a fortune and a future. But here's the thing about debts. They collect themselves. He gestured toward the table. Sit. Let's talk like men who remember Sunday mornings. The cowboy didn't move. You came to kill us. Jonas shrugged. Kill? No. The mines still need hands. I came to trade. The word hung in the air like a noose. The woman's voice broke it. You think I'll go back? Jonas smiled faintly. You think you left? The cowboy's pistol cleared leather. Enough. Jonas didn't flinch. You gonna shoot me in front of your new cause? Or you want her to see what righteousness really costs? The silence stretched tight. Outside, the wind howled against the shutters. A single flake of snow slipped through a crack and landed in the fire, hissing. Then the woman stepped forward, the rifle low but ready. You branded me once, she said, but you can't mark what's already free. Jonas looked at her, amused. Freedom's a story men like him tell women like you. The rifle fired. The shot ripped through the silence, shattering the lantern glass. Darkness swallowed the room. The cowboy moved first, slamming the door open to let in the moonlight. Jonas staggered back, clutching his shoulder, not dead, just wounded, the way justice sometimes is. Go, the cowboy said to the woman. Out the back. She hesitated. And you? I'll end this. Jonas's laughter came through the smoke. You can't. You'll always be what we made you. The cowboy leveled the gun, voice low. Then I'll die proving you wrong. He fired once, not to kill but to break the chain hanging by the hearth. It clattered to the floor between them, glowing red from the firelight. Those days are over, he said. Jonas stared at the broken links, disbelief flickering through pain. You think that erases the mark? No, the cowboy said. But it starts the forgetting. He stepped back, pulling the woman toward the door. Together they burst into the night air. Snow blinded them, burning cold against their faces. Behind them, the cabin glowed with the half-light of embers, Jonas's voice fading into the wind, half curse, half prayer. They didn't stop until the ridge fell away beneath them, and the world opened wide again. The stars returned, sharp and countless. The woman slowed her horse. "You spared him." He nodded. Killing him wouldn't change the brand. She looked at him for a long moment. Maybe it already has. The trail ahead wound into darkness, but the air felt different now, lighter, though the storm still followed. Behind them, somewhere far below, the last of the fire died out. The storm broke by dawn, leaving the mountains glazed in frost. Smoke from the burned cabin twisted upward, faint but visible, a beacon for anyone who knew where to look. They didn't speak as they rode. The horses' hooves sank into soft snow, each step muffled like a heartbeat, too cautious to be heard. The woman's shawl was torn. The cowboy's hands bled where the reins had cut him. Survival had become a habit neither of them questioned. When the sun finally cut through the mist, he looked back. "They'll come," he said quietly. "Jonas doesn't stop." She met his gaze. "Then neither do we." The day stretched on, endless white and silence. Around noon, they reached a canyon split by a frozen river. The cowboy dismounted, scanning the ridges. The wind carried faint echoes, distant hooves maybe, or his own guilt chasing him. "Here," he said, leading the horse beneath an overhang of stone. "We rest till dark." The woman sat beside him, rubbing warmth back into her fingers. "You could have killed him." He shook his head. "Killing him would make me what he says I am." She watched the horizon. "And if he kills you?" "Then you tell the story right," he said. They shared a canteen and silence until the sun dipped low. Then came the sound again. Clearer now, deliberate, 3 hooves striking rock, a pause, then 2 more. A signal. "He's close," she whispered. The cowboy stood. "We move." They followed the frozen river north, the canyon walls closing in. Shadows lengthened. Snowflakes drifted like ash. Every few minutes, the wind carried another sound. A distant whistle, the snap of twigs, laughter that didn't belong to the mountains. By the time night fell, the moon had turned everything silver. The trail forked around a stand of pines. The cowboy paused. "Left leads to open ground. Right goes through the caves. Which one gets us out?" He looked up at the stars. "Neither easy. But the caves hide what the light can't forgive." They turned right. Inside, the air grew cold and still. Their footsteps echoed off stone, the walls glistening with frost. At the far end, a narrow shaft of moonlight spilled through a crack, illuminating something carved into the rock. A cross, old and blackened with soot. The woman touched it. "Looks like the same mark from the cabin door." He nodded grimly. "Jonas's men were here long before us." A sound cut through the quiet, a match striking. Light flared behind them. Jonas's voice filled the cave. "You always were predictable, brother." The cowboy turned slowly, gun drawn. Jonas stood in the passage, coat torn, shoulder bandaged, lantern in hand. Behind him, 2 other men, faces hidden by scarves. The cowboy raised his pistol. "You followed the fire," Jonas smiled faintly. "I followed the story. You make a fine trail of it." The woman stepped forward. "You'll never take me back." Jonas tilted his head. "Back? You think you ever left? The brand doesn't fade. It spreads." The cowboy fired. The shot hit the lantern, bursting it. Darkness slammed the cave. Flames flickered where oil spilled, painting wild shadows across the walls. "Run!" he shouted. They bolted down the tunnel, the glow behind them chasing like an angry ghost. The cave floor sloped downward into ice. They slid, half-controlled, the sound of pursuit echoing close behind. A bullet ricocheted off the stone near her shoulder. The woman stumbled, nearly falling. The cowboy caught her arm, pulling her through a narrow opening. They burst into open air, the cliffside high above the river. Below, moonlight shimmered on the frozen water. Behind, voices shouted, torches flickering through the cave mouth. "They'll trap us here," she said. "Not if we fall first," he answered. She blinked. "Fall?" He pointed to the slope. The river's half ice. We slide. We live, maybe. And if we don't, then we stop running. They looked at each other, exhausted, defiant, alive. Then they jumped. Snow roared around them. The world spun white and soundless. They hit hard, cold water cracking beneath, then holding. For a moment, everything stopped. When she opened her eyes, the cowboy was already beside her, breath ragged, gun gone. He helped her up. Above, Jonas stood on the cliff edge, lantern raised. The light wavered like judgment itself. He shouted something the wind carried away, then turned, vanishing into the darkness. The woman's voice was barely a whisper. "He's not done." "No," the cowboy said, "but neither are we." They limped along the riverbank, the ice groaning underfoot. The moon followed them, cold and merciless. Behind them, smoke curled once more from the mountains, Jonas marking the sky, promising the hunt wasn't over. They followed the frozen river until dawn broke grey and thin over the valley. Frost glittered on every branch. Smoke from their breath hung in the still air. The woman's steps dragged, but she didn't ask to stop. "Keep west," the cowboy said. "If we reach the trading post by nightfall, we'll find shelter." She glanced at him. "And if Jonas finds it first, then he finds the ruins of what he made." They moved through a stand of birches, snow whispering underfoot. Every sound seemed too loud, every silence heavier. When they finally saw the shape of the trading post ahead, the relief almost hurt. A small building of logs and tin, shuttered tight, the roof sagging under snow. Smoke curled from the chimney. The woman frowned. "Someone's already here." The cowboy unholstered his revolver. "Then we make it friendly before it's not." They approached slowly. The door opened before they reached it. A man stepped out, older, wrapped in a patched coat, grey in beard and eyes. His hands were empty, palms forward. "Don't shoot," he said. "Ain't got the strength for dying today." The cowboy lowered his gun a little. "You the owner?" "Used to be. Now it's just me and what's left of the world." The man's gaze flicked to the woman. "She's hurt." "I've been worse," she said. He nodded toward the door. "There's coffee on, fire too. You can pay with silence if that's all you've got." They went inside. The room was warm, crowded with shadows and the smell of burnt wood. The woman sank near the fire. The cowboy stood by the window, watching the river trail vanish into fog. The old man poured 3 tin cups. "Storm took half the valley last month," he said. "Been quiet since, but quiet don't last out here." The cowboy studied him. "You seen riders?" The man nodded slowly. "2 yesterday. One had a bad arm. The other wore a preacher's coat." The woman's eyes darkened. "Jonas." The old man looked between them, understanding dawning slow but sure. "You got trouble tied to that name." The cowboy said nothing. "You'll need the back way out," the old man said. "There's a pass through the canyon if the ice held." He moved to a trunk and opened it, pulling out an old rifle and a small map, edges burnt. "Used to be my son's," he said. "He went south chasing lawmen, never came back. Guess there's no safe side in any fight." The cowboy took the map, eyes softening. "You've done enough." The man shook his head. "If that coat-chained devil's coming, I'd rather die giving you a head start than wait for his sermon." Snow began to fall again, soft, relentless. The woman stood, her face pale in the firelight. "We can't keep running. He'll burn every town between here and the border." The cowboy met her gaze. "You want to stop him?" "I want to stop what he stands for," she said. "He's not chasing me anymore. He's chasing what I remind him of." The old man stirred the fire. "Then you'll need the ridge above the pass. High ground, cold wind. That's where a man decides who he is." The cowboy looked down at his hands, the cracks in his skin black with soot. "Maybe that's what this is for." He took the rifle, slung it across his back, and turned to the woman. "We ride before the snow covers the tracks," she nodded, fastening her shawl. "You think he'll follow?" "He's counting on it." They stepped out into the falling snow. The sky had turned the color of ash. Behind them, the trading post's lantern flickered like a dying star. As they rode west, the woman asked, "What happens when we reach the pass?" He didn't answer at first. Then quietly, "That's where we stop running." The wind rose, carrying the sound of distant hooves, too far to see, close enough to promise. Jonas was coming, and this time there would be no escape that didn't cost something. The cowboy looked back once, then forward again. Next ridge decides everything. The woman nodded. Then let's make it count. They rode into the storm until the world became nothing but white, soundless and waiting. The storm had turned the ridge into a white wall. Wind cut through their coats like knives, and every breath came out as smoke. The cowboy's horse stumbled. The woman steadied it, her face raw from cold. "This is the pass?" she asked. He nodded toward a narrow opening between the cliffs. "Once we cross, there's no turning back." They led the horse on foot. Snow stung their eyes. The wind howled like a thing alive. Somewhere above, thunder cracked, not from the sky, but from rock shifting under ice. The woman stopped. "Listen." Hoofbeats, faint, rhythmic, coming from behind. He turned. Through the white haze, 3 figures emerged, dark shapes, moving steady. Jonas rode in front, coat snapping in the wind, arm bandaged tight. Even at this distance, his voice carried, "Brother." The word echoed off stone, thin and sharp as a blade. The cowboy raised the rifle, but Jonas only laughed. "Still preaching with bullets. You never learned. The world don't change by aiming at it." The woman stepped forward, shouting over the wind. "Then maybe it changes by refusing to kneel." Jonas smiled, teeth flashing white. "You think he freed you? He only traded one cage for another." She lifted her chin. "Maybe. But at least I chose this one." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "Jonas, turn around. Let it end here." Jonas dismounted slowly, boots sinking into snow. "It ends when you stop pretending you're better than the men who branded for you. You think you erased your sin by saving one soul. There were hundreds. You just left them behind." The wind roared between them. The cowboy's hand shook on the rifle. Then maybe saving her was a start. Jonas's eyes softened, almost pitying. "Still clinging to redemption like it's a map. There's nothing left to save." He drew his pistol, quick as a snake. "Drop the gun." The woman raised her rifle instead, stepping between them. "No, he's not your judge anymore." Jonas's voice dropped to a whisper. "Move aside, girl." She didn't. The snow thickened, swirling like ghosts between them. Then a sound split the air, a rumble from above. The ridge groaned, ice cracking like thunder. Jonas glanced up too late. A sheet of snow tore loose, an avalanche rolling down the slope. "Run!" the cowboy shouted. They sprinted toward the rocks. The roar swallowed every other sound. Snow slammed into the ground behind them, a wall of white fury. Jonas disappeared in the cloud. The woman stumbled. The cowboy caught her, dragging her beneath a ledge as the world went blind. When the storm finally settled, silence returned, heavy, absolute. Only the wind dared to move. They crawled out, gasping. The ridge was buried under feet of snow. No sign of Jonas, just his horse, reins caught in a drift, eyes wide with panic. The woman fell to her knees, trembling. "He's gone." The cowboy looked out across the whiteness, or buried. "Either way, it's over for now." She turned to him, voice raw. "What about the others he branded? The ones we left behind?" He met her eyes. "We find them. We make it right." She shook her head. "You can't fix a scar." "No," he said softly, "but you can make sure no one gets marked again." She stared at him for a long time, then nodded. The wind shifted, carrying a faint smell of pine, the first breath of spring through the frozen pass. Behind them, the snow shifted once, just enough to break the silence, a hand, half buried, fingers curling before vanishing again. The cowboy didn't see it. He took the woman's hand and started down the far side of the ridge, the sky opening pale and wide ahead. The valley opened wide beneath the thawing ridge. Meltwater streamed through cracks in the ice, whispering like 1,000 voices beneath the snow. The cowboy and the woman followed the sound until they reached the edge of the forest, where the air smelled of pine and smoke from unseen fires. They stopped at a clearing ringed by burned stumps, an old camp, long abandoned. The woman stared at the ashes. This was one of the branding sites, she said quietly. The cowboy knelt, brushing snow aside until the symbol showed beneath, two interlocked circles scorched into the dirt. Jonas's mark. She looked around, unease settling in. If he's alive, this is where he'd go. He stood, rifle across his back. Then this is where we finish it. A low groan drifted through the trees, hooves labored breathing. The horse from the ridge limped into view, reins dragging. Behind it, a figure stumbled from the shadows, coat torn, face streaked with ash and blood. Jonas. He laughed once. Horse. Takes more than snow to bury me. The cowboy raised his gun. Don't make me end this. Jonas spread his arms. End what? The past. The woman's scar. Yourself. He stepped closer, eyes wild but clear. You don't kill me for her. You kill me to forgive you. The cowboy's hand trembled. The woman stepped beside him, voice steady despite the fear. He's not wrong, she said softly. You don't have to prove you're good. Just be different. Jonas sneered. Listen to her, preaching mercy like it's rain on a grave. The cowboy lowered the barrel slightly. Maybe that's enough? Jonas froze, confusion flickering through rage. You'd let me live. Living's the harder sentence, the cowboy said. You'll carry what you built, every mark, every name. Jonas's gaze shifted to the woman. You think mercy makes you free? It just makes you useful. She stepped forward, holding his own broken brand iron she'd found half buried in the snow. No, she said quietly. It makes me stronger than you. Then, without raising her weapon, she dropped the iron into the fire pit. It hissed and went dark. Jonas stared at the smoke rising from the ashes. For a moment, his breath hitched, something close to grief flashing across his face. Then he laughed again, softer this time. So you'll never escape me, he said. I live in the laws you left behind. The cowboy holstered his gun. Then I'll rewrite them. Jonas drew his pistol, faster than thought, but before he could fire, the ice beneath his feet cracked. The ground gave way, a hidden sinkhole collapsing under the thaw. He dropped the weapon as snow and mud swallowed him waist-deep. He clawed at the edge. Help me! The woman froze. The cowboy stepped forward, caught between instinct and memory. She whispered, If you save him, he'll come for us again. He looked down into Jonas's eyes, half madness, half plea. You said I couldn't forgive myself, he said quietly. Maybe you were right, but I can still forgive you. He grabbed Jonas's wrist, straining to pull him free. The ground shifted again. Jonas's fingers slipped once and twice, and then he was gone, the earth closing over him with a hollow sound. The cowboy fell back, gasping. Snow settled where the hole had been. No movement, no echo. The woman knelt beside him, gripping his coat. He's gone. He nodded slowly. The law he lived by died with him. She stared at the hole. You tried to save him. He looked up at her. I had to. If I didn't, he'd still own me. Wind moved through the trees, gentle now, carrying the scent of pine and thawing earth. The sky opened wide, grey giving way to the faintest blue. She took his hand. What now? He smiled faintly, weary but unbroken. Now we stop running. They walked toward the line of trees, the morning light growing stronger. Behind them, the ashes cooled, snow falling softly over the place where the old world had finally buried itself. By the time they reached the lower valley, spring had begun its quiet work. The snow no longer screamed when it fell. It melted softly into the earth, feeding the grass that dared to return. The cowboy and the woman followed a narrow trail along the river. The current, once frozen, now whispered against the stones like something remembering its own song. They hadn't spoken since the mountains swallowed Jonas. Words felt too small for what had ended, and for what hadn't. At a bend in the river they stopped. Ahead stood a weathered church, its steeple half collapsed, doors missing. Wildflowers had grown through the cracks in the steps. The woman touched the fence post. This used to be a parish, she said. You can still smell the candles. The cowboy smiled faintly. Maybe they burned for people like us. Inside, the pews were broken and the floor slick with moss. But the light, gold through the shattered windows, made the place feel alive again. He knelt near the altar, brushing away leaves. Beneath them lay an old ledger, pages half ruined by rain. He opened it carefully. The handwriting was faded, but one line still showed, "Names of the forgiven." He read it twice, then looked at her. "Think they'd mind if we added ours?" She smiled, a small, tired thing that still managed to reach her eyes. "Only if we forget the others." They sat together on the steps. The wind moved through the open doors, carrying the sound of the river. The world felt new, not because it had changed, but because they finally had. After a while, she spoke. "You think he's really gone?" The cowboy looked at the sky. "Men like Jonas don't disappear. They turn into stories, warnings." She nodded. "Then we tell ours better." He reached into his coat and pulled out the brandiron's handle, warped, broken, but still warm from the fire. He tossed it into the river. It sank without a sound. "There," he said. "That's one mark washed clean." She looked at him. "And the one on me?" He touched her wrist gently, where the scar had faded to a faint line. "That one's proof you survived. Proof I still can." They sat in silence as the light shifted, painting the floor in colors of dawn. A bell somewhere in the valley rang, old, off-key, but still ringing. The woman stood first. "You said we'd find the others, the ones left behind." He rose beside her. "And we will, but not as hunters." "As what, then?" He met her gaze. "As the kind of people who build something worth staying for." They walked out into the open air. The horse waited near the fence, head lowered, patient. The cowboy lifted the saddle, she took the reins. Together, they faced the trail west, where the sky stretched wide and blue and the sun cut through the last of the mountain clouds. As they rode, the woman looked back once. The church stood small against the valley, but its shadow stretched long like a promise. The cowboy touched his hat to it, murmuring something the wind carried away. When she asked what he'd said, he smiled. "Just saying goodbye to who I was." They rode on, two silhouettes against the light, no longer fugitives, not yet legends, but something rarer, people who had learned how to stop running without forgetting why they once did. The river followed beside them, brighter now, singing the same tune it had sung beneath the snow. And far behind, somewhere deep under the mountain, the last echo of Jonas's voice faded into silence. If this story struck a chord in you, if you believe that mercy can be braver than revenge, that every scar can still become a mark of strength, then don't let this tale fade when the screen goes dark. Leave a comment below and tell us what you would have done on that frozen ridge. Would you have pulled the trigger or reached out your hand? Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story of courage, redemption, and the fight for a second chance beneath the western sky. Your support keeps these forgotten voices alive. Every like, every share, every word you write down there in the dust. Because in this world, legends don't end. They ride on, carried by the ones who still believe that even the lost deserve to be found.